I'm very pleased and honored to have an alum and a very important person in the jazz community here in New York with us, pianist and club owner and entrepreneur and musician, Spike Wilner. Please.
Hi.
So I'm curious. So at this time, post New School, how did you define success for yourself as a musician? Were you thinking like that? What to you would have been being successful?
Well, that's actually an interesting question. What happened with me was, like I said, artistically, I had a very lengthy developmental period into what I consider a maturity period, where I feel like I'm sitting now in terms of my art. But when I was young, like I said, a lot of the guys that were my closest friends were kind of geniuses. I mean, it was kind of hard to be around. Brad Mehldau,
right,
who's a damn genius. You know, just watching him emerge as an artist to the stature he has today was amazing at that time. But I was in a position where I was still growing as an artist, so I didn't have the kind of opportunities that those guys had. So I had to kind of focus on the local scene, which meant playing in restaurants, creating opportunities for myself. And one of the things that I got into doing right away, which was kind of an entrepreneurial thing, and I think in a way kind of precursor to where I am now, is that I would find a spot that might have had some music in it, but no piano.
Okay.
And then found some cheap piano somewhere and went to the guy and said, look, I'll put a piano in your place for free, and you can use it for other bands. I just want 1 or 2 nights a week for myself. And most of the guys went for it, you know, and I created about 4 different
that is pretty clever.
places around town where I had steady gigs.
See, this is a great point about entrepreneurialism, or even just making gigs for yourself. Is what Spike did was he wasn't just thinking, what do I need as a musician? I need a place to play. But he was also thinking, what does my partner, in this case the venue owner, what do they need? So he came up with a win-win scenario that served both parties. And this is a key to making good working relationships with your partners, not just on the bandstand, but behind the scenes, is being aware of how all the parts fit together and what everybody needs to be successful. And this goes back to the idea of community. For everybody to make this work as a community, everybody's got some skin in the game. Everybody has to pay their bills. So if everybody understands what the other person needs, they can work together, it's better for everybody.
For me, what was happening at that time was I was having some ego issues because of the fact that I was surrounded by very successful young musicians, my peers, and I didn't consider myself, you know, I mean, I had some opportunities that I'm proud of, but it was a lot of just, you know, like, you know,
journeyman type of,
you know, jazz is a survival of the fittest, and also it's like, you know, those that really can play get gigs. I always talk about it, but you know, you can't blame the jazz scene if you're not working. You got to just like examine yourself as an artist and what you are and what you have to do to create your original voice on your instrument, you know, and it takes a lot of self-examination and a lot of work. There's no room for ego. Ego's the worst. It's, you know, I mean, you got to believe in yourself, but you got to also have a very, very humble approach to life and be prepared for anything. And if you're in a position where things aren't working out, you have to be prepared to look in the mirror and say, I'm not happy, things are not working here, this is my fault. You have to say, you know, you can't blame anybody. You say, hey man, you know, it might, you have to be able to see it, you know, like, why am I not getting any gigs? Well, maybe because you suck, you know, maybe. I don't mean to be harsh, but it's like, that's what I had to say to myself. Like, why aren't I working? Why? Well, maybe because when you do get a chance to play with people, it's not happening. They're not, you know, you're turning the time around, you're doing whatever problem it is. So stop like trying to coddle yourself and say, oh, you know, it's everyone else's fault and hell with everybody. You know, we got to say, well, okay, put the nose to the grindstone a little bit harder and figure it out. You know, if you know, you can't just bang your head against the wall forever and say, why can't I get through this wall? You kind of maybe say, okay, wait a minute, this kind of hurts. Oh, here's a door, I can go this way. All of a sudden you're through, you know, it's lateral thinking, you know, and that just takes modesty and humbleness and resolve.
And an understanding of how to improvise.
Improvising, well, that's what jazz musicians do the best. I was in a position where by the time I was getting to be about, you know, in my late 20s, early 30s, I was getting really bitter. You know, I was turning into a kind of just a pissed off, you know, And I had a realization at one point where I said, man, you know, the thing that's hanging me up is that I'm trying to be a professional musician. Mm-hmm. And what
did you mean by professional? Because
well, like making my living, you know, solely from playing music. Well, I was doing, and I've always made my life as a musician, but it was this mindset of professional, you know, musician. Mm-hmm. And what I needed to do, and what I did, was discarded that and replaced it with artist. And I said to myself, instead of being a professional musician, I am an artist, which means that my main concern is my art, which is a personal expression that I have to be honest about, work hard at all the time, scrutinize, but at the same time, not wait for Jerry Teekins at Criss Cross Records to call me up and say, hey, Spike, we want you for a trio date, or, you know, Warner Brothers at that time, or, you know, if I had to do a recording project, guess who was going to pay for that? Spike Wilner. That meant saving and finding my own engineers, finding my own, you know, you can't, I decided not to wait any longer for these opportunities that I thought maybe I deserved, maybe I didn't. And so what I did was, first of all, I took the pressure off me about being, like, I tried not to. It was like a mental exercise. And now I really achieved it, actually. I feel now I don't really give a shit. But at that time, I did kind of give a shit, but I still tried not to give a shit. But it was like, you know, just practice. Just study your music. Let those guys be successful. You know, that they're, you know, hats off, bro. You know, of course. Right. But don't compare yourself. You know, just your voice is just as original as anybody's if you can find it. You know, if you can be yourself, you're going to be original. That's all there is to it. I think the more important thing for me was taking the pressure off of the need to be successful. You know, in my own eyes. You know, like,
and success meaning
like, you know, touring or being told by everybody what a great player you are, or everyone calling you for gigs, your phone ringing up, whatever you want to determine is your success as a musician. For me, I was just like, hey, you know what, if I don't get any gigs, that doesn't mean, you know, even if you're the worst piano player in the whole city, what are you going to do? Kill yourself? You know, you can, I guess.
Right.
So that's a waste of time, you know.
Right.
So practice, you know, just get on the thing, you know, stop fetching, you know, that's what my grandmother said, you know. Do it. And I did it you know what, it was good. That I entered a nice period where I was really, you know, in that mode, and it made a big difference in my life. And actually, I've never left that mindset to this day, because I still approach my music this way, and now I have much more freedom than I ever did, because I don't have to rely on my music to pay my bills.
So this is also really valuable, is in this process of figuring out your path and your definition of success. It's okay to not feel like I only have to make money from playing music. It's okay to build a situation for yourself that allows you to make music maybe, but there's other things that you've got. Some people call it a portfolio career. Maybe part of that's teaching. Maybe part of that's recording. Maybe part of that is doing something that's totally unrelated to music, but that affords you the ability to continue playing music and to not necessarily give it up. And these things are always changing. You can always change the mix of what it is that you're doing to keep yourself, and you can always redefine success. But I think sometimes, and Spike's story kind of bears this out, that sometimes that pressure to be, well, I got to be a professional musician, meaning I'm only going to make money from doing gigs. That's laudable, but at the same time, sometimes it can hold us back.
So Smalls opened in '94. The very first year, it was opened by a man named Mitchell Borden, who's still instrumental in the club to this very day, and my partner. It's a basement space, 183 West 10th Street, right on the corner of 7th and 10th. And when Mitch started the club, he first tried to have a conventional club where he tried to get a liquor license and couldn't do it. You know, it's hard and
expensive.
Yeah, well, at that time it was still cheap. I mean, and the space at Smalls was pretty cheap at that point. His rent was about $800 a month for this basement, so it was amazing. So what he ended up doing was just having a $10 cover, and it was open 24 hours. It was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week club. It was insane. And the reason why was because there was no liquor license, so it could be open all night. Right. And there was nothing in there, just a pretty bad piano for the most part, and some instruments, and then couches. I started playing there. The very first band was Grant and Pete and Brad at Smalls. I remember that very clearly. That was the debut band. And then after that, very soon, I got in there and started playing myself. And then I ended up having my own slot, which was like it was an after-hour slot for sure. It was started at 2. My slot was like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. on Tuesday, some insane thing. I'd sleep all day and then go to my gig. And I just came in with my own band, my own trios. I started doing a lot of projects. I brought Stefan Harris in there when he was a young kid, and Omer, of course, and I just stuck with it. But September 11th changed everything in New York City. It had a huge impact on what happened in the city.
So it really continued like that until...
Yeah, Smalls ran from 1994 to 2002. In 2002, Mitch went bankrupt with the club, and there was a number of factors why, and it was kind of like the heralding of the new era of New York in terms of clubs and venues and how to survive. The city changed economically. They ran all the small businesses out. They brought in the corporations. New York City became corporatized under Giuliani after 9/11, and what that did was it raised all the rents. So Smalls, for example, for one thing, what happened is the city really started coming down on code violations, and Smalls was just this basement. It was not like really a safe environment for humans to live in. It was the kind of thing that in New York used to be no big deal, and then all of a sudden after 9/11 it was like, fire department down there finding him, the city department, health department, insurance, and then the rent went to $8,000 a month.
Wow.
On the space, from $800 to $8,000.
A straight jump? There was no...
Lease expired, and the guy was just like, this is your new rent, take it or leave it, and Mitch was like, well, I'm...
Tenfold increase?
Yeah, that happened all over town, everywhere. What happened was Smalls stayed closed for about 2 full years, and then in 2004, another bar owner got the lease on the space and put about $100,000 worth of work into it, renovated it. In other words, rebuilt the bar, put it up to fire code, new bathrooms, most importantly installed a air conditioning heating system that was, really a good one, and then opened it up as the Rio bar. It was like supposed to be a Brazilian bar. Put televisions everywhere and neon. It was awful. And people would come in, they'd be like, is this Smalls? And they'd be like, no, it's the Rio bar. And they'd be just like, shoot, gone. It was so depressing. I couldn't even look at the place. It made me sick. But eventually what happened was this guy realized that he was going to go out of business fast. And he contacted Mitch and said, why don't we just reopen this place at Smalls? I'll own it. You can book it and manage it. And Mitch agreed. So that was about 2005, I think that happened. Or 2000, yeah, right around there. And Mitch came to me and said, we need a piano. Can you get a piano? So I did my thing, and I got the piano at Smalls. That was kind of like my last, put a piano in the club, and then...
So you did that for a long time, just get a piano and put it in...
That was my concept. I said, man, get yourself a gig, buy a piano for somebody. It works, And I did it for Smalls, and then I started doing my gig again at Smalls Sunday nights, and then around the end of 2006, the owner, this Brazilian guy, was just like, this sucks. I'm not making any money on this jazz club. I'm not making money anywhere. He said, I'm going to sell this business. He said to Mitch, if you want to buy it, you can get the first shot at it. Otherwise, I'm just going to get out of this. Right. And Mitch and I had become very close at that point. We were already very good friends. And he discussed it with me, and he told me what the number was on what the guy wanted, and so I decided to buy the club. That's what I did. I got with I had another buddy of mine.
How did you do that? I mean, it must have been a significant amount of money.
Well, for one thing, I had a buddy from the New School who was not a musician, a poetry major, he was a longtime friend, and he was interested, and we both came up with 50-50 on the bread. And bought the place. He didn't sell it very much. I mean, it was like $90,000, which he was asking for, which was for the lease and the liquor license and.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, well, you were not buying the property. You're buying the lease, which was only like a few years left on it, and the liquor license, which was the most important thing. That's what the guy really did. That was amazing. Is he got a liquor license in that spot. Right. I mortgaged my apartment that I had. I had bought this apartment in the '90s up near Manhattan School of Music, and took out mortgage on it and got involved. And that was in 2007, February 2007. And
what was it? So what was it like now? Now you're a business owner, and you had been a musician, pretty much full-time musician. How was that switch? Was that difficult?
Well, yes. I mean, there was a lot of Smalls is, see, the thing with Smalls is it's not just your typical business like opening a bar and like if I had started from scratch on some new place.
Right.
Because the history and the community that had already existed were so intense there. So it was like stepping into a hornet's nest in a way and trying to accommodate the weight of the history of the place and the expectations that the musicians had on it, plus my own complete naivety about being naive about business.
Was there anything that you felt that being a musician helped you in business in any way?
Well, you know, everybody says that. I hear this a lot lately that I'm this great businessman, and I never quite understood why people say that about me because, you know, I don't really think about money. I don't really care about money. So maybe that's what gives me the advantage is that I'm just not profit motivated in terms of cash. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not an idiot, and I know you can't run in the red, so I'm smart enough to know how to make things work and keep your eye on the bottom line.
Right.
So maybe that's being a good businessman. But
make it sustainable.
But the profits for me have always been spiritual profits, you know, because first of all, from just a purely selfish motivation, my art, my music has grown immensely in the last 5 years. Like I am playing on a level that I would have never been able to have accomplished otherwise.
And why are those two related, opening Smalls?
Because the club has afforded me the opportunity to A, perform in my own space, mm-hmm. B, to be in an environment where I'm around a continuous influx of talent, mm-hmm. you know, be exposed to it, to meet, my band is all guys and one girl actually who's in my band now who's kind of brilliant, half my age, you know. I mean, I'm 46 and mm-hmm. I'm playing with, 20-somethings. And they're all badass, you know. And a lot of times guys in my generation don't get to meet the younger musicians right. or incorporate them in their own music, which has actually been a tradition in this music.
So do you explicitly see Smalls as like an area for that to continue, or is that just a happy accident?
You mean in terms of my own music, or in terms of...
In general.
Well, I mean, Smalls, Mitch and I have a mission statement in terms of Smalls. We have a philosophical mission that we both feel eye to eye on, and also all the people that are involved in the business now are all kind of on the same page, which is that Smalls is primarily for the community of musicians. Mm-hmm. It's for giving artists the opportunity to perform and to share their music with an audience, a listening room. It's for young artists to have the opportunity to develop in jam sessions so that people can come and be exposed to the music. Mm-hmm. And we also feel very strongly about charity in terms of like having a positive effect on our society by being charitable. That is to say, literally giving people either money or help in whatever the way they can. And
you mean like musicians maybe who are struggling or ailing, or
yeah, jazz musicians who need help.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done that quite a bit actually these days. And the other thing that has become one of the most important mantras for us is the preservation and dissemination of this music. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I did immediately upon taking over Smalls in 2007 was to create a comprehensive website. And this website that we have for the club has been, I have a friend who's a programmer, but me and him basically built the whole thing ourselves. I've populated all the data, and it's just been my baby. The primary focus of it has been this audio archive that we've been amassing. So starting in September 2007, I decided to record every gig that's played at the club, every single one. So we have them all.
It's incredible.
And they're all in a database by the date, the artists that were on the date.
And is it cross-referenced?
Cross-referenced. So if you choose...
So all the sidemen and everything, too?
Yeah, you can choose, Ari Honig from September 4th of 2010. Click on it. There's the list. All those guys have a link to their own bios, how to reach them personally, and then an audio stream of that actual night where you can listen to every single gig. Now, there's certain gigs that are not up there because the artists have requested that. We always respect the artist's wishes to not have the stuff posted.
Okay.
But for the most part, most artists are very supportive of it, and we have more than 6,000 recordings now. We have like literally 5 full years of recorded material that are available.
Incredible.
So
do you maintain those servers yourself? Or
yeah. Yep, I sure do. And the other component that I installed was video streaming, live video streaming, which when I started 5 years ago was still kind of a very basic technology, and there's been a lot of advancements in that field in the last few years. And one thing that's happened for us is that we started getting a huge amount of traffic to our
site.
Well, it's particularly to our live video, where people would log in and watch shows online.
Like, what's a good number?
Well,
for you now, for like, you know.
Well, the thing is, what's happened is I put in a paywall recently. We decided to go for a subscription basis for our video, and it was not the most popular decision, but it was one based on some essential facts for us, which is that the revenue from the club at its current levels will not sustain us into the end of this 10-year lease. Right. That's just the bottom line. Like, what's happened with us at Smalls is that there's a ceiling as to what we can earn.
We've only got so many people
60, we have 60 seats, you know. Right. We have a $20 cover charge. We feel that if we raise our cover charge, it would be detrimental to our thing. Right. We sell drinks. We can't price our drinks any higher than, well, how much can you sell a beer for really at where it's. Right. So there's a maximum that we know in the best circumstances that we can earn on any given night. Right. It's like that scene in the Titanic where the water's coming up and you get this much air left, and you know that if you don't get out of there eventually you're done. Right. Done. Yeah. So what we decided was to try to tap into the internet as a medium.
So it's like infinite number of seats.
That's right. So when we were doing that originally, we were getting about 300. We ended up being, before I put the paywall in, we ended up having almost 1,000 viewers a night on our cameras, like 360,000 unique views a year. Wow. Watching Smalls. That's what prompted my decision.
And were they relatively evenly distributed like that? Like, or was it some nights were really big and other things were...
Sure. You watch patterns. It was easy to see that, certain bands, you'd watch Ari Honig, for example, come in and shit would be like, shoop. Right. And then it'd be like Spike Wilner band would be like, shoop, like, but that's fine, at least there was some people watching, my mom's on there, go, yeah. And so what I decided to do was, like I said, we created a paywall. It took a lot of kind of thinking. We upgraded our technology in terms of the streaming. And now
I remember last time we met for lunch over there, you were telling us this had just happened. You just upgraded the cameras and all that stuff.
Yep. And so actually what's happening now is even more interesting, and it was something that I never foresaw. But there's two interesting things. One is that Smalls has become, I'd like to say in the last 5 years, I think it's based on its entire history, a world-known name in jazz. Like people,
I think that's totally
across the world, Europe and Japan and Israel, and they know our name. They know Smalls Jazz Club. Yeah. And it's become basically like a brand name for quality New York City style jazz. And and with the video streaming, what's happening actually right now is that I have some people who are interested, more than interested, we're actually making it happen, investing in creating a new company, which we're going to call Smalls Live Media. Mm-hmm. And the company is going to have various components that we're going to be focusing on. The number one being our live video shows and subscriptions to that, trying to find a model that really works in terms of pay-per-view and what we can do to really generate audience in that regard. Our audio archive, which we'd like to figure out a way to monetize in a way that's fair for artists, as well as, we have our catalog of Smalls Live, what we call Smalls Live recordings, which is right now 32 titles strong. Okay. And then we're also getting into educational component, which would involve things like this, master classes, online master classes with famous jazz artists. And then the last component is what we call Smalls Live Presents, which is going to be trying to do concert presentations in other venues. Yeah, and this year I did my very first one of those in Paris, where I brought a group of musicians to Paris to present, like Smalls Live Presents. And it was successful enough that we got asked to do some stuff next year for like the Madrid Jazz Festival. And awesome. We envision a way of, sending musicians on tour.
What has the reaction to this new streaming thing been amongst musicians?
There was actually, there was a group of concerned musicians that were not happy about it. The 802 got involved. They were not happy about it. Mm-hmm. And a big part of the first part of this year was me trying to meet with the union and the heads of the union, which I did on several occasions, and with various groups of musicians who had organized together to discuss it. And I even had a forum one day at the club where I invited artists and union people to come to Smalls to just have an open talk about it, where I could take questions. And because, you know, artists are rightfully concerned about being exploited. Right. That people are recording them, or that they're you know, somehow getting screwed out of money that they deserve. Right. And that's a very viable concern. However, as everyone in this room knows, the technology in this last few years has just gone, it's changed everything. You know, if I'm walking down the Isle of Smalls on, like, say, a night where, you know, whatever, let's say whoever, Dana Stevens is in there with, you know, Gerald Clayton, there's about 500 people with their iPhones out, you know, recording every, you know, videotaping, and, you know, that shit's on YouTube before we, you know, everyone's recording it. So as artists, you're being recorded whether you like it or not. That's just the nature of reality.
And so was there any thought of a no recording policy?
No. How can you stop that? You can't. There's no point in even trying. You can't prevent people from using their, it's just. Yeah. So what we do is just say, look, this is the nature of the new era. Right. Recording is inherently non-valuable. You can't sell CDs anymore. There's no more distributors. You know, there's no inherent value in making a recording anymore. So where is the value? Well, the value is exposure for artists. The value is, you know, people knowing you, knowing your work. So with us, what we can do with Smalls Live is, first of all, organize it in a way so that everyone gets credit. Mm-hmm. Like if you go to the gig, you know who that bass player was on such and such a night. Here's how you can get in touch with them. Right. You know, or people saying, wow, Smalls, I know Smalls. That's that club with that great jazz. Oh, but I don't know John Smith. I never heard him play. What? Oh, wow, he's great. Right. Bang. You know, so like by associating with our name, our good name, you're enhanced as an artist. Your reputation is and that's kind of where we're going with the mark, is to just say. So what I tried to do is really communicate as honestly and openly as possible with all the musicians, to hear their concerns, and to try to, as I always have, just gain their trust that what I want to do is for the benefit of the musicians, not for anybody else's benefit. I'm not, like I said, I'm not concerned with my own profit. I am a musician. I want a profit, as like every musician. And you know, it was very successful, actually. The union really ended up supporting me in the end. Bob Cranshaw gave us the, he said, you know, he was into it. He's very forward-looking musician for a guy of his age. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of guys that were pissed. To those guys, I just try to be as respectful as possible and say, I totally understand your position, but this is the path we're taking. Right. And, you know, for example...
So is there, I mean, so then now is it sort of a mandatory thing? Can anyone say, no, I don't want to do it?
No. Now our policy at Smalls is that if you accept the gig at the club, you send an email back to me saying that you acknowledge that it's going to be live streamed and also rebroadcast. In other words, what we do is we stream the whole show live, and then at the end of the night we rebroadcast it one time till our next live show. Okay. We do that so that people in Europe and Asia can watch it without it being 4 in the morning for them. Right. We record everyone's audio. Putting the audio in our audio archive publicly is the option of the artist. If they don't want it, we respect that. Mm-hmm. The live videoing, that's just part of the gig now. And if you don't like it, then your choice is to not perform at the club. Right. And we've had artists not perform at the club, and even big-name artists.
I imagine people probably approach you, like musicians, I'm sure a lot of artists approach you all the time wanting to play.
Yeah.
How do you deal with, like, I'm sure people probably give you like millions of CDs and all this stuff. Like, how do you choose, like, who you want to play your club? It must be pretty cool to be able to, like, choose who like you're going to present, and like how do you deal with that stylistically versus what you like or what do people like?
It's a huge responsibility for one thing that is the most difficult part of the thing, is the programming, who plays, because there are a lot of artists that want to play there. You know, of course we're very popular and well, the way I approach it is that I try to allow the scene to dictate who's who. In other words, I've become a very keen observer of the jazz scene. You know, my nose is always up to see who's around and what's happening. And generally speaking, musicians who are emerging, you hear about. You don't need to have, there's no CDs involved or press kits or, like, for me, and one of the frustrations I think that a lot of people have with me personally at Smalls is that I don't deal with agents, and I don't deal with managers, and I don't really have a CD player. You know, I don't listen to anybody's CD, and I don't, you know, I mean, I can remember back in the old days at Smalls where people would come in with their press kit, you know, photo and beautiful presentation, and they'd leave it for Mitch, and like the next day the thing would just be desecrated, like in the back room, you know, just taped to the bathroom wall, you know, CD shattered, you know, it was terrible, you know, kind of thing. But and I to this day have people who come in and, you know, like this guy will, Mr. Wilner, here's my kid, and it'll be like this finely crafted, leather tooled like portfolio that, you know, I'm like, so, you know, how much did you pay to make this thing, you know? And I would say, like, keep it, man, please don't give it to me because it's going to be wasted your money. Give it to someone else. And I'm not trying to be glib about that, but I'll give you a good example because it's a kid from the new school. There's a drummer named Kyle Poole. Maybe you guys, I'm sure you all know Kyle. So Kyle, to me, is a great example of someone that's kind of coming up through the ranks in the jazz scene without any press kit, CD. You know, I mean, I met Kyle a year ago. Well, he's like 19, 20 years old. He's a kid. A year ago or something, and he was just coming to Smalls and sitting there night after night, checking out the shows and hanging at every jam session, and super enthusiastic, very, very friendly, charming guy, and really nice, very, very modest, you know, but confident, you know, not like self-effacing, but like just had a great vibe. Like, you know, you could tell that he had something in him that was talented, but he wasn't trying to be Mr. Big Shot either. And so he was sitting in and slowly sitting in, and then next thing I know, I see him getting asked to do a few gigs by some of the jam session guys. And then, you know, this next thing I know, he's working with, like, you know, Theo Hill and Josh Evans and Frank Lacey, this band that we have there. And so what I was seeing was just him kind of integrating himself into the scene naturally, and people recognizing him and saying, hey, come along and play on our gig next week or whatever. And by doing so, establishing himself and being at the club. And then, like, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I can't remember what it was, we had a little scheduling conflict, and I needed a band for the after hours. And I saw Kyle, and I was like, hey, why don't you come into Smalls with a group? And he was like, cool. And then he brought in some, like, new school kids, and it was a great night. It was kick-ass. It was just, like, full of guys. Everyone was playing. It was great music. He was happy. It was just like, and it was, like, such a nice thing, you know, like there was no resume presented. And I can name a number of musicians that are like that now, that are currently working at Smalls. What I like to say to people is just be present on the scene and sit in, be heard, meet people, be modest. If you're really good, you'll play. Everything at Smalls is a handshake. You know, everything's word of mouth. We just base our thing on our reputation. And mostly me, you know, like, I just try to cultivate a relationship of trust with every musician. You know, I know almost everybody personally. I've worked with most everybody. And I try my best to just be as compassionate and fair-minded as I can with everybody so that people trust me, because I'm just not trying to screw anybody over. But it's you know, you can't give everybody everything. You can't. So I just, like I say, I let the scene dictate itself, you know. The cream rises to the top. People don't want to hear it, but it's the truth, you know. It's just like the best musicians will work. If the mediocre ones will not. And so if you're mediocre, you either have to really practice and get great, and that is possible. You know, beautiful thing is that you can be mediocre at one point in your life and become a genius later on. That is possible. Or you have to be, you know, inventive. What's happened, what I'm so happy about with Smalls, is that it's become this listening room where people come, and the people that come to Smalls really know. They sit in the audience, and they're just, like, really attentive, listening. They know the artists. They're very receptive. And so for the artists, it's a great, the experience of performing in that club is really amazing, because you have this really warm, dedicated audience, and they're right there next to you, and so it's this kind of really beautiful symbiotic thing with audience and artists and community. And my job is to just, like, not screw that up.